The down and dirty is I was a 22-year firefighter paramedic. Got into it right out of high school. Loved it. Was having a great career. About 2012-ish, I started having kids, and the paycheck just wasn't enough anymore. And so I found myself the kind of the year where it all came to a head was I did on 1,000 hours of overtime that year. So I was at the firehouse for 6 months out of 12, day and night, gone, and it just didn't work anymore.
Welcome to the Threefold Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is the podcast where you'll not only learn how you can achieve massive success in multifamily real estate investing, but also how you can simultaneously pursue great relationships with your family and a better walk with God. You can achieve financial freedom through real estate investing without sacrificing the relationships that mean the most to you. Now, here's your host, Lee Yoder.
Welcome back, Threefold listeners. I hope you're having a great week. We've got a return guest with us today. Seth Teagle is joining us from Columbus, Ohio. Had Seth on before. Great guy. Was a fireman and a real estate hustler on the side. Last time I talked to him, now he is a retired fireman and full-time real estate investor. So anxious to catch up with him. A little bit about him real quick, and then we'll bring him in. He's the CEO of Stream Group and co-founder of the Firehouse Bros. He and his team have overseen over 185 million in assets that's how much they have under management right now. His team's vertically integrated, which means he does his own property management. Very interested to talk to him about that today. This makes things interesting as they try to expand, grow, and manage all aspects of the business. So can't wait to get into all that. Seth, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me back on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So Seth, in case people didn't catch your first episode and they don't want to go back and listen to it, I highly recommend it. But why don't you just give us like the real quick, how did you get into real estate? And then maybe even kind of zip through how you got to where you are today, where you're doing it full time.
The down and dirty is I was a 22-year firefighter paramedic. Got into it right out of high school, did some college and did that. Got in, loved it, was having a great career. About 2012-ish, I started having kids, and the paycheck just wasn't enough anymore. And so I found myself the kind of the year where it all came to a head was I did on 1,000 hours of overtime that year. So I was at the firehouse for 6 months out of 12, day and night, gone, and it just didn't work anymore with a baby. And I was just I really wasn't happy. I mean, I loved the job, but I wasn't happy doing the job that much, right? And I really didn't have any other options for income. And I really didn't know what to do. And I thankfully connected with a guy that when I was in college, we were roommates, and I went in the fire service, he went in real estate. When I reconnected through either MySpace or Facebook or whatever it was back then. He was a multimillionaire doing house flipping, hard money lending, wholesaling. He was running a meetup group in Pensacola, Florida, and was like selling he's doing like an education course kind of before it was like a thing on how he built efficiencies in flipping houses. And so I like reached out to him and we connected, and I'm like, man, what happened? Like, how did you go from the guy that I knew to this guy? And so he gave me 3 steps to take, which was, the first one was read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'd never heard of it. I read it. It was like unplugging from the Matrix. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then he told me to go to a local, I got to find a local meetup and I got to find a mentor. And I did those 3 things, worked for a gentleman for about a year and a half doing project management on his flips and managing his portfolio of rentals, which was about 22 single family and some duplexes. And what I realized through all of that was that I didn't want to flip houses because it was another job. And I saw him, break even or lose money. He'd make money on one, but then lose some on another or break even on the third. And just the amount of time and the logistics and all the things it took to do that, I just thought, man, this is not what I want, because I thought real estate would be a side hustle and the firefighting would continue to be my main path of career and income. And it was like, it was another job and I didn't want to do that.
Right.
And so during all of that, I started hearing more people like on Bigger Pockets and some of these podcasts that were, not necessarily multifamily podcasts, but when they would come on, they were talking about how they always had success with like 4 units and 6 units and 10 units and like finding as many, building where you can put as many doors underneath one roof as you can, because you only had one roof to worry about, or one location, or one, and everything just became more efficient. And the layouts were very similar, and how you could just expand your purchasing power and you could buy a lot of the same material and all of that stuff. I'm like, man, that makes a lot of sense to me, especially when I'm trying to maintain a career and do this. And So that led me to, learning, right? I put together some kind of rudimentary buying criteria. I started hustling and going to real estate offices around my immediate location because there's no, like, I didn't even know what to call like a big broker, or how would you even do that back then?
Yep. Yep.
And just bootstrapped it, put together like a Word document, kind of like a resume of like, hey, here's what I'm looking to buy. Took it to these different real estate offices and said, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Was probably about a month later, I had a realtor call me and she said, hey, I've got a longtime client. He's got, a bunch of rentals. One of them is this 50 unit that he's looking to sell. Would you be interested? And, not knowing what I didn't know and being as gung ho as I was, I thought, sure, let's do it. Right. I mean, you'd show me the deal if it makes sense. And again, I did rudimentary underwriting. I like rudimentary cap rates. I looked at rentometer and said, hey, this is telling me the rent should be like 750 and this guy's showing 550. Like, there's upside. Let's go.
Yep.
And so I put it in contract, went to a investor in that meetup that I had built a relationship with and said, hey, let's do this together. I took a HELOC out of my home. That was the only money that I had. I didn't have a whole lot of money in the bank. So we took out some equity from our house, put it together with his equity, that he had in his rentals. He did a cash out refi. And then week before closing, the loan was not going to close because the bank went from 20% down to 25% down. I'm like, well, now what am I going to do? So I called my mentor. Here's my problem. He said, call this guy's private money lender. I bet you he'll give you the cash. And that's exactly what happened. So we raised $75,000 the week before.
Man, that network was so important.
It's huge. And that's one of the big things I talk about even nowadays, but that was how we closed it. I mean, again, fast forward, I learned a ton. About 20 different times that deal could have went sideways and wrong, but it didn't. 14 months later, we did a cash out refi, netted about $1 million, which was huge. And it just showed me that, hey, this is it. Like, this is what I just made. Like, my part of that was like 4 or 5 years of working in the firehouse in one transaction. And I thought, let's do this again. So we took our money, rolled it into another deal, and started working on that one. And it was around that time that I thought, this could like really become something where I don't need to be a fireman anymore. I could do this full time. And so that's kind of where the idea was kind of birthed in my mind, that someday or some point I would probably exit the fire service. And I got around some other guys that had already left the fire service that were real estate investors doing multifamily and commercial real estate. Cool. And seeing their successes and the fear of like, what's life like after you leave, kind of like when you get out of the military, like what do? You're kind of in a
fish out of water.
You're in a ship with no paddles. You're like, well, I don't know. So we're, being around them really gave me some confidence. And then, I went from there to, we started syndicating. We started doing, I met Tim Shaw, which is one of the executive partners in the Stream group. And he's also a firefighter. And the two of us together were like, if we come together and we do this, we could really pour gasoline on this fire that we were each independently doing well. But if we want to 10X our growth and 10X what we're doing, we could do it together. And that's what we started doing. And we did a couple deals together after, immediately after that. And then we met up with another guy, Tim Waukee, who's a partner in our group. So there's 3 of us. And together it's been crazy. So now
awesome.
We're 1,700 doors between the 3 of us, 185 million. We've got another 15 million we'll close on by probably the middle of January. And then we've got a land development deal I'm sure we'll talk about it's gonna be about an $80 million build out. So a lot of stuff, a lot of growth.
Yeah. So remind me, what year did you close on that 50 unit?
I want to say it was like 15, somewhere in there. Yeah. Somewhere. It was like I said, because the idea popped in my head, and then like I said, it took me a couple of years of learning and kind of of working through it. Because I just knew if I was going to do a deal, like, it had to be successful. Because if I did it wrong, it was, I'd
be your one chance and then you're done. Yeah. No, and I think there's some truth to that. Now, and then when did you end up leaving the fire department?
I did not leave until this year.
Okay. This year. So 8 years. Yeah. I just think that's important. So, because real estate got so hot, so many people thought, well, real estate is now this get rich quick scheme, and I can go do this and blow it up and leave and be a millionaire. And it's really not how it works. It's more commonly like when you do it right, when you do it well, when you do it in a way that it could last, it does take 8 years. It takes time, but that's one great thing about real estate is you can do it on the side, especially if you leverage other people and if you network and, you do multifamily, you have rentals, you use a property management company, or you have people help you with that. You can do it on the side, but keeping that job kind of helps you bankroll that to some degree. And you can kind of build it up. And then, once you do, then, I mean, it can change your life. Absolutely. Like it did for you and your family, Seth, but it does take time. I mean, you really worked really hard at that for
Oh
8
yeah. I
years.
mean, well, I mean, that first deal, I would go to the firehouse for 24 hours and I'd get off and I'd go straight to the property and I would work I do 12-hour days. And there was a lot of
Yeah.
sweat equity that I did because I knew how to do drywall and install windows and do flooring. And then, in the beginning, that's what I was doing. I was down
Yep.
there with the contractors doing the work because I didn't go in capitalized enough to be able to hire
Yeah.
all of it out. So I was down there, or my stepdad would come down, and the two of us would be down there grinding it out, doing the work.
That's how it
It
works,
is what
man.
it is. I mean, and
Yep.
that's where I'm all for burning the boats, but man, you got to have a plan, especially if you got a
Yeah.
family, you got kids, you need
Yep.
insurance or whatever. Like if I had an 8 to 5 job, I probably wouldn't have been able to do what I did. Right? I'd have come to a head a lot faster of like, it's going to be real estate or it's going to be working,
Yep.
but having the ability to work 24 hours, then have 2 days off, that really, I mean, I'm working 10 days a month. So that opened up my time. And then there were days when we had a big project going on that first deal where I would take vacation and I would burn my time so that way I'd spend 3 weeks down there working, you know what I mean? Or two
Yeah.
weeks down there working and whatever.
Yeah.
So again, my schedule, it's not for everybody. My schedule really helped, I think, accelerate what we could do and what I could do. But,
Yeah.
uh,
And mine did too. I mean, I had to work most days as a home health physical therapist, but I go back to that, Seth, because today, since COVID, more and more people are working from home and have the flexibility. So it may lend to, being able to get into real estate on the side. But Seth, today your business is very different. You're not swinging a hammer, as often. You're more, high level and running a company, and you've got people doing that. I know you ended up bringing a lot of your property management in house. Tell us a little bit about what the reasoning behind that was. What was the genesis of that, and then how's it going today?
yeah. So I don't know. We've got probably, I mean, just under 700 doors here in Central Ohio now, and that's primarily what we manage.
Okay.
Because everything else is I mean, the Tim Watkey's in Salt Lake City, Utah, and he's got stuff out there. We've got kind of our presence with him in some of those deals.
Okay.
And so he does his own stuff out there, vertically integrated but me particularly, like in our team that's here in Ohio, there's 23 people that work for us. We do the property management, we do the construction management, we do the construction. And the reason that we did it was because we continue to have problems with property management companies that didn't align with our interests or weren't executing the business plan successfully. Right. And, as we talked kind of before the call, the property managers are not like usually they're brought in at the end. There's even times if you bring them in early in the process when you're like doing your due diligence and you have somebody walk through there with you, they can say whatever they want to, but execution has always been a struggle for most property management companies, whether it's they manage well, but they're terrible at construction management, or maybe they manage construction well, but they're not very good at property management, or maybe they're just not motivated, right? If you bring them 50 units, but they're managing 1,000 and somebody has 300 with them, they're going to take that phone call first. They're going to go to that guy's property first. They're going to, you're kind of like the smaller fish in the pond. And that was just really hard to, put this whole deal together, go to investors and say, here's the pref, here's what we're going to do, here's the rents, and then have absolutely no control over the timelines and rent seasonalities and planning those things out. And like, how do we get from, $400 or, well, I should say we'll say $500 a month in rent to 800. Well, they don't want to push it that as fast as we would want to. And I think executing that plan we continue to find resistance from the companies. A lot of them wanted you to sign the management agreement and then you're done. Like some of them we worked with here in Central Ohio, like you can't tell them what the rents are going to be. They're going to set the rents. They're going to set all these different things. And it just doesn't work when you're making promises to people that are putting their money in. So we bought a property, I hadn't really ever thought about doing it. Then we bought a 180 unit property, came with a couple of folks in the management office and then some maintenance guys. And Tim Shaw and I thought, well, hey, let's start a property management company, like along with this, right? That sounds great. And it has been good. It's given us the ability to have things dialed in. We've taken on more properties that we already had with other people. But with that comes, now you're an employer, you got to deal with benefits, you got to deal with vacation, you got to deal with those things. And for a long time, we were, like we kind of said earlier, it's like I felt like when you're a kid, my dad, if we go to the pool and he's like, hey, you're going to learn to swim today. And he just throws you in and you got to figure out, I mean, eventually you'll figure it out. Right. I mean, that's kind of how it's felt when we started the management company, was because we didn't have a good mentor. If I could go back and change it, I would have hired a property management mentor that could have said, hey, here, do these 10 things first, like to get off on the right foot, because that was part of our problem. Is we, I wouldn't say we didn't get off on the right foot, but we just didn't know what we didn't know. And we've discovered some of those things along the way, and we're much better now. But man, it was a big headache there for a while of doing it,
Yeah.
and then bringing in the right
you could have
folks.
moved faster and probably a few less headaches, a few less time stubbing your toe.
Yeah, I think we
With
could have,
somebody just
and
telling you.
yeah, bringing in the right people, bringing in the right
Yeah.
professional. Like we've hired an asset manager now that he's the buffer between us and the staff, and helps oversee things. He's got 25 years experience. He's built and sold 2 property management companies. He was the COO of a very large real estate firm in Florida. Like, he knows more than I do about what it takes to run a property and run it well and run a
Right.
portfolio.
That's great.
And that's the thing, is that our investors love that, right? I mean, I'm good at what I do and I can't be good at everything.
Yep.
So let's bring in somebody that's proven that they're very, very good at that, and we'll pay them good. We'll do everything that we need to do to maintain that. But it makes my time more available to find more deals, to build relationships, to kind of oversee from the 10,000-foot view, which is really what we need to kind of have, see all the moving pieces and parts.
Yeah. So Seth, if you were coaching somebody today, would you tell them to get to a certain unit count before they start trying to bring stuff in house? Or would you tell them, no, like, manage your own quad and then, get another quad and you're managing a couple quads. And obviously, you would just do it yourself for those first few, and then you start adding pieces. So do you go ahead and start it in house, or do you maybe get to a certain unit count and then start bringing it in?
I mean, it's tough because I always tell people that I feel like they should manage their own rentals at some point, right? So you really understand what it takes to manage them, because it's not easy, and it's not. I mean, it's like the worst part of owning real estate. Like, I love the depreciation and the appreciation and the cash flow and all those great things, but then
buying and selling is a lot of fun.
Yeah, but then actually dealing with the day-to-day nuances is the hard part. And I mean, you're going to grind it out. I mean, if you're buying a 4 unit, unless you have great tenants that, never bother you, maybe it's your experience would be easy. But I would say most people, when they get started, they can't afford a property manager because, nowadays I think it's probably non-existent. But even if you're using the 1% rule on a rental and you're trying to get you're making a couple $100s in rent. I mean, if you're paying a property manager, you're not cash flowing at all. But to that, I would say that I would rather pay a property manager early on, and that frees you up then to buy more stuff, to find more deals. And if you can, you can do 10 units or 20 units and not necessarily get some experience or be kind of hands-on with the management company, but it would free you up to get bigger. And then at some point, I don't know, it's probably different for everybody, is when can you afford to pay somebody like a salary? Because that's the hard part, right? Is if you're making cash flow and but you got a W-2 and you're like, man, I'm building this rental portfolio so I can leave my W-2. Well, it's no different than any other like new business starting. Is if you start drawing a salary from those rentals, now because you can only pay one person, and if that one person is you're gonna be the one doing the work.
Yep.
So that's why for me, even when I bought that first 50 unit, I didn't feel that I could handle managing it for leasing and tenant dealings, as well as the construction. So I chose the construction because I knew that better. And I let a third party company do it for the first year. And I worked closely with them, but that was the only way that I could see it to be successful. So I think it's a cash flow management. What are your expectations? If you're in a job that you hate and you want to get out of it as quick as you can, you're going to have to leave to manage like that's the job, that you're going to leave one job and go to the other job. The other job is managing your rental job. But as you scale, I would say to that though too, is getting a mentor, getting somebody, the right mentor, but getting somebody that's been there or has the experience that can help you move faster through that period. You know what I mean? I feel like you just got to kind of punch through that as fast as you can.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Seth, mentorship, coaching. Tell us a little bit about the Firehouse Bros. What are you guys doing over there? Who's that group right for? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we started the Firehouse Bros. Tim and I did probably a year ago, and it was just we kept having people reach out to us and be like, "Man, how did you guys do it?" Or what, asking a lot of questions and whatever. And for us, our time, I don't have time to take 20 lunches a week or 20 coffees a week or do whatever. So we thought, look, let's set up one channel for us to be able to help people. But we're going to talk to the masses at that point. So like, hey, if you're interested and you want to learn how we do this and you want to jump in with us, great. Here's the avenue that you do that. I don't take lunches. I don't take coffees. I don't take those kinds of things anymore because I just don't have time for it. So if you want to learn, if you want the inside stuff or you want to do deals with us or you want to learn kind of like the inside track of what we do and how we do it, or you want help, that's the avenue that we offer to do it. But it's really for anybody that wants to scale, anybody that wants to get into
Yeah.
multifamily, like, it's funny. I read a post the other night that somebody put on that they said 90% of the people out there that are educating are basically full of it. And I don't know if that's an accurate number or not. I know there's a lot of people out there that have made a business out of it, and rather, they make more money doing the education stuff than they actually do on the rentals. That's not. It's like I get stuck
I
in a
know
rock and
that's
a hard
not you
place. You know what I
guys.
mean? Because
I
the
know
thing
that
is
doesn't
that, like,
speak for you guys.
how do you not identify as that, right? I mean, and all I can say is for us, we're in the trenches doing it. We're,
Right.
and that's the thing. I think if people, if they want education, is what's the meat and potatoes of what you're talking about. If we're just talking about mindset and we're talking about puffing up and making you feel good and all
Yeah.
that stuff, like that doesn't get it done at the end of the day. I mean, so I love all that stuff and it's great and there's a time for it, but if you're struggling to grow your portfolio, that's not the room to be in. Or if you're struggling to get a loan, you're like, man, I've kind of hit this ceiling in my business or the ceiling in my portfolio and I need help. That's not necessarily the room to be in, right? I mean, at least in my experience, it's not been the room. So we try to create a room where we can give people practical advice, practical ways of doing things, and stuff that we've learned along the way. I mean, we provide people a job description, we provide people with tons of HR stuff, we provide people with
Nice. Yeah.
anything that they would need. Like if you came to me and said, hey, we want to, here's our portfolio in Dayton and we want to build out our own management company, we can give you all the tools that we've paid tens of thousands of dollars to get. We'll give it to you through being in our group, and that's,
Mhm.
to us, it's like, how do we really change people's lives or change the trajectory of what they're doing? That's what I wish I would have had when I got into my first deal, or the lessons that we've learned in our growth. That's
Yep.
what we try to teach people or to help people and
Yep.
give them real, like ways to execute.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, just talking about the meat and potatoes stuff because unfortunately, I feel like a big part of coaching is often like just how to get the deal, and frankly, that's not that hard. All you have to do is offer more than anybody else is willing to offer,
Yeah.
and you're going to get the deal, right? And then you got to actually raise the money if that's part of it. And that was actually pretty easy for a while. It's much harder today. I would say a lot of equity has really dried up, and a lot of people are scared. But that was easy for a long time. But that is not how you make money buying real estate. It's not you make money when you buy. No, it's you make money when you operate it well, because if you operate well, you'll cash flow, which is the most important thing, because that's the most guaranteed thing, or the thing that you can control. You can't control appreciation as much, but you can control the cash flow if you operate well. So that's the most important thing. But then if you operate well, then you are going to force appreciation. And that's how you can really grow wealth. But it all comes down to operating well. And I know it's what you guys do, Seth. So I love the group. I would suggest people go check it out. Real quick, Seth, where's the best place to find you guys and what you're doing there at Firehouse Bros?
If they're wanting Firehouse Bros, they can go to thefirehousebros.com and they can check
Okay.
it out through
And
there.
then just your website in general while we're talking about it.
The stream groups
The
is
stream
plural,
group.
the
Yep. Okay.
streamgroups.com. Yep.
And yeah, we'll have that in the show notes. So guys, check those two things out. What do you see in there in Columbus? Columbus was is an incredibly hot market. At least for the Midwest. I mean,
Yeah.
Columbus just seemed like on a level of its own as far as the Midwest goes. Still hot. I know it's really slowed down. I know, compared to kind of the pace you guys were going at in your purchases, I know you guys have slowed down. I'm guessing, you guys are conservative underwriters. A lot of people want to say that. I know that you are. Said interest rates are in the sixes now. I mean, I know there's 7% on 30-year mortgages, but we're seeing in the sixes for commercial loans. It's hard to buy stuff, right? So, like, what are you guys seeing? What are you thinking for this year? What's been different? What's going on?
I mean, I think that, so we'll talk about Columbus specifically, but we're still doing deals. I mean, we've got two that we're working on right now. One of them is a loan assumption. So I think that's something that's super important. I mean,
Yes.
creativity in how you're buying or executing is super important. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, in that instance, again, broker relationships are very big. The deal got brought to us and said, hey, these people are looking at selling. They don't want to go to market. Would you, I know you guys would probably be interested in this. They think, that they're out of state group. That's the only thing they have. They're not really, feel like they're executing it well, but they've got a 7-year term left on their loan at 3.85%. And I'm
Nice.
like, yeah, that sounds like a winnable loan assumption right there. Cause it's funny, cause a year or two ago, loan assumptions were, the problem because the rates were 5.5%, but
Yeah.
new debt was 3.
Yep.
And now it's like anything that was locked in 3 years ago, 2, 3 years ago, it's like that debt has value to it now. And so
Well, and
that
like you
was,
say, now you need to get creative. A year ago, why would you get creative? Just go to any bank and get 3.5%. There's no reason to get creative. But today, totally different. I mean, you absolutely need to get creative.
yeah. So
That's awesome.
that one's working because of the loan, and then the fact that we can manage it in house. So I think that, being strategic on all of those things are good. And then we've got a big industrial space that has some self storage tagged along with it that we're doing.
Wow.
And the big thing is like we went to the seller, and he's a local guy that I kind of had a relationship with, but I should say this: our kids go to school together. I knew him, but I didn't know that he owned it. Right and it got brought to me
Cool.
by, again, a friend of like a mutual friend. And he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And I didn't know who the seller was. Well, then when I met him, I'm like, "Well, why didn't you say it was this guy?" And so as we talked, I'm like, "What?" I'm trying to find out why are you selling? And he's got another investment that he wants to liquidate this so he can get into a different investment. And I'm like, "Well, what do you need to get out of this in order for that deal to make sense?" And we were able to come to an agreement on a price, but he's going to do seller carry back of 15%. So the deal's in the mid 5 millions, but he's going to carry back over 800,000 for 3 years at 3%. I mean, that makes the deal work, right? I'll give you your price, but you give it to me in my terms.
Give us our terms. Yep.
And that's kind of what we've been, like that deal works because of that. And there's a ton of room for additional expansion, for, a value add, development piece of it.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, so for us in 3 years, when we would refi or we would do something to get him paid back, not only will we be able to pay him back, but we'll have several $1 million worth of added equity because we're going to do, a huge construction build out. And, again, would I do that in other parts of the country? Maybe not, but in Columbus in the surrounding tertiary and secondary markets where everything is still crazy and is only going to continue to get crunched and get crazy because of what Intel's doing here and some of the other things that are coming.
Right. Yep.
It makes sense. Even developing the development we're going to do. I mean, I don't know that I would develop anywhere else in the country right now. I'd probably be a little nervous, but with the shortage of apartments and homes and everything else that we're already having, plus all of the shortages that are going to be added on top of that with what's coming, if you can pencil it in today's market, it will work 10 times better in 2 years if the rates go back down to where they're at, or even for us, even if we buy the land and we sit on it for a year. I mean, let's sit it out, see what happens in Washington. Let's see what plays out. We're not under the gun to have to break ground, and that's I think the thing is, a lot of people that we've talked with that are developers, they got into it, they did maybe phase 1 last year or 2 years ago, and now they were going to start doing phase 2, but now phase 2 doesn't make sense because all the climate of the financial market and the interest rates and everything else, like, it doesn't pencil anymore. And so that's the thing for us, like, if it pencils in today's market with the rates, it's only going to be better in a year and a half or 2 years if the rates are back in the 5s or wherever they end up panning out. But I think right now even our bridge debt that we've got 3 projects that have bridge debt on them, but our bridge debt's at 6.5%. So we're not refinancing. We went to the investors. We're like, look, it makes 0 sense to spend $100,000 on a refi. We might get you your money back up, but now we're locked into that rate. And I think that they'll continue to go up some, but they're going to come back down. And and that's we want the agility, I guess, to be able to maneuver, rather than lock in. And
that's really good stuff, Seth. I mean, what I hear is like, this is the type of market now you got to be creative, because it's not as easy to just go to any bank and get 3.5% interest and raise the money and go. Now it's time to be creative. If you can talk to the seller, and you can do things like seller carry or seller finance, or, find out why they're selling and make it a win-win. That's important. And then either be patient. I think that's great for a lot of people, or just have the ability to be patient. If you get into something, can you hold it for a while? A lot of times, if you have a good interest rate, can you hold that? So the ability to be patient is very important in an environment like this. So, what I like to ask here at the end, Seth, as we wrap up here, what you've done, you started at square one and you've built this great business. You've been able to get into it full time. What would you say is the one key ingredient that you need to be a successful real estate investor? Maybe specifically if you want to get into multifamily.
That's a good question. I think you need to think outside the box, but I think you need to be teachable. I think that there's so many lessons to learn. And I would prefer to not learn them the hard way. So I rely heavily on our network. I rely heavily on strategic partnerships and I'm not afraid to ask for help or ask, say, hey, you know, here's the situation or the bottleneck or the issue. What have you ever had this happen before? And if you have, what did you do? And I would rather learn from other people's mistakes than make them my own, and learn that way. So I think that's,
Oh, so good. Yeah.
that's probably the biggest thing I would say.
Right. And then, Seth, just a little bit on your family in your life now. Like, I always like to ask that same question. What's the key ingredient to maintaining your priorities? So while trying to have success in real estate investing. So what have you done? How has your life changed a little bit? But what do you do? Because you don't have the job now, but I know how busy you are with real estate. And when you're an entrepreneur, when you're building a business, I mean, you never clock out. You get to work, there's always stuff that you could work around the clock if you wanted to. Whereas, the fire department eventually sends you home. So what's that been like? And what are you doing to maintain your priorities, Seth?
I think, I try to, and again, I'm not perfect at it, but I try to time block. I try to say, hey, from, I'm in the morning from this time to this time, I'm working out or I'm reading or doing whatever. And then from this time to this time, I'm doing these. And I try to focus on those things solely when I'm doing it. And then, just being present when I am there. Again, my wife might say I'm terrible at it, but, I really try to, like, going to my kids' sporting events. Like, I missed so much stuff when I was at the firehouse all the time that, like, now I love going, or being there, like taking them to school, like, yes, there's meetings I could get on, there's emails I need to respond to, there's people I need to get in touch with, but I like to be able to just, I get up, I'll put it this way, I get up earlier in the day to get ahead. So that way when my kids get up and I can spend time with them before school, and I can, I don't take them every day, but I can take them to school.
Yep.
I enjoy that because I never got to do it beforehand. So,
I love that.
It's little things like that. And then, just making sure that you have, for me, time set aside for family, right? We do, we're taking the kids to New York City at the beginning of December to go see all the Christmas stuff and do it, just do cool stuff for them. Because to me, it's like all this hard work you do and all the stress you have and all the different things that you do. Like if you don't stop and take time out for what you love and what makes you kind of like re-energizes you, then it really, like, I'm no better off than I was 10 years ago or 8 years ago when I was working 1,000 hours of overtime.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Yeah. The time blocking can be really helpful. It's hard to do. I know I struggle with too, but then, man, being present when you are with them, it's really important. Hard to do, but good stuff. Hey, Seth, you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad. Any other good books that you've read recently? Any good book recommendations?
Oh, I mean, some that I've read, I don't know if I would say recently. I'm reading one called, I think it's called On Fire. I mean, I don't know if it's a pretty good one, but I would say the one, I would put it this way. So besides Rich Dad Poor Dad, I know probably people have always said it is, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan's always a big one that I tell people, because it just opened my eyes from being a blue collar guy that, like, I feel like I had to work the hardest by doing the work. And then it really kind of helped me let go. And then Atomic Habits. Those are probably two.
Okay,
I know they're
cool.
They're kind of like nothing new, but if you've never heard of those are two, I think, that really helped me in the beginning, change my mindset.
And it's still good. It just pushes you in that direction. Well, hey, Seth, this has been really good, man. We'll put all the links in the show notes. You guys have been killing it there in Columbus. Really good operators, which I respect, because, like I said, to me, it's great to buy and sell. And when the market just goes up, it's really pretty easy to do pretty well in real estate. But I think the tide's turning a little bit, and you're really going to have to operate well. And I think you guys are doing that. And now you're, helping teach others. So I love that, because that's the number one thing to me. You've got to operate well. And we use third-party management. So when I tell people, I'm like, you've got to find an awesome property manager. But if you do it yourself and you learn from guys like you, Seth, then you just have to learn it well and do it really well. So before I let you go, Seth, I always like to ask my guests, how might my listeners and I be praying for you in the coming weeks?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say that, just that I continue to have wisdom and make good decisions. Like, we got a lot on the line, a lot of money on the line, a lot of other people's money on the line, and we're always looking for wisdom. We're always looking for discernment in some of the deals that we're getting into. And, sometimes we walk away just because of a gut feeling, and sometimes I think that's, you really never know why, but some of the best deals that I've done are the ones I walked away from. So
might be the
continuing just to have those things.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Absolutely. We'll be praying for that for you, Seth, you and your team. Cool, Absolutely. Man. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on, man. This has been really helpful. Learned a lot, man. Good luck to you guys. Keep going. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for another great episode. I hope you'll take action on what you've learned today. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving Lee a 5-star rating and review. And check him out on threefoldrei.com. Until next time, 1 Timothy 6:17.